The flashlight beam, a nervous tremor in Detective Miller's grip, cut a shaky path through the pre-dawn mist. It found the disturbed earth first. Not a grave marker, just too deliberate. A choked gasp escaped Officer Davies' lips, swallowed by the damp, hungry woods. The wind, a mournful whisper, rustled dead leaves underfoot, each crunch echoing the sudden silence in their chests. Then the glint. Something else. Something unnatural asterisk. Miller's breath hitched. A slow, agonizing sweep of the beam. A patchwork quilt of soil and roots. The next discovery changed everything. It was a primal, guttural cry, more animal than human, tearing the stillness of Havenwood apart. Red and blue strobes painted the ancient oaks in grotesque, dancing shadows as more units arrived. The air grew thick, not just with the morning chill but with a palpable dread. Neighbors, drawn by the frantic sirens, stood huddled behind the yellow tape, their faces ghost-white in the flashing lights. Their breath plumed, ragged and uncertain. Whispers died on their lips, replaced by wide, terrified eyes fixed on the illuminated patch of earth. Each gasp was a shared horror. In their quiet streets, where unlocked doors were a legacy, not a risk, a dark stain had just bled into their idyllic lives. A wound had opened, not just in the ground but in the very soul of the community. Every single person felt it, that icy finger tracing their spine, that insidious knowledge that something truly unspeakable had been unearthed. The next discovery changed everything. A violation so profound, it threatened to unravel the delicate fabric of their trust, their peace. The crime scene tape, a stark, angry yellow against the muted browns and grays of the forest floor, now felt like a permanent, ugly scar. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, heavy with unspoken questions. A secret had been kept. How long had this terror lurked, unseen, unheard among them? The sickening reality settled in. For years, someone walked free. Someone new. Imagine a secret so profound, it allowed a killer to walk free for decades. To live a normal life, cloaked in plain sight, while their unspeakable act festered beneath the surface. Unsuspected. A ticking time bomb, waiting for the ground to give way. But what they didn't know was, the real nightmare wasn't the gruesome discovery itself, but the chilling realization of what it implied. The sheer, audacious nerve of it. The betrayal. The horrifying truth that what you don't know can kill you. The horrifying truth that what you don't know can kill you. And for Sarah Jenkins, a vibrant, ordinary young woman in the quiet town of Havenwood, the unknown was a shadow waiting to consume her. Sarah wasn't a headline in the making. She was the sun-drenched laughter echoing from the local coffee shop, the diligent student hunched over textbooks, dreaming of a small florist business. Her apartment, a cozy second-floor nook, was filled with thrift store finds and stacks of books on botanical illustration. She'd hum while watering her jade plant, a gift from her grandmother, often chatting with her beloved tabby, Miko, about her day, her plans, her frustrations with organic chemistry. She called her mother every Sunday, a ritual of love and reassurance, sharing anecdotes about her regulars, her latest baking experiments, or the funny incident with the delivery driver. She was kind. She was present. The next discovery changed everything. She was Sarah. Tuesday, October 17th. A crisp autumn evening, the air carrying the first bite of winter. Sarah finished her late shift, locking up the coffee shop just after 10 p.m. The walk home was one Dee made hundreds of times, a well-lit path past familiar lampposts and sleeping houses. She waved goodbye to Mark, the night baker at the patisserie next door. She pulled her cardigan tighter against the chill. A simple act. A routine journey. But that night the path diverged. The comfortable certainty of her daily existence evaporated into the cool, silent air. Her best friend, Emily, called her phone at 10:30 p.m., a casual check-in that went unanswered. No big deal, Sarah often put her phone on silent. But by 11:00 p.m., a creeping unease began to settle. Emily tried again. But what they didn't know was. Then a text. Sarah's mother, Mary, felt it first, a cold knot tightening in her stomach when her usual good-night message remained unread. This wasn't like Sarah. The next morning, frantic calls turned into panicked trips. Emily rushed to Sarah's apartment, her knuckles raw from knocking. The initial chaos was a whirlwind of desperate hope. Posters with Sarah's smiling face appeared overnight, taped to every lamppost, every shop window. Volunteers formed search parties, combing the sprawling woods at the edge of town, shouting her name until their throats were raw. Local news channels picked up the story, "Missing Woman Havenwood." The police, initially treating it as a standard missing person report, quickly realized this was different. Her apartment, pristine, showed no sign of forced entry. Her purse, keys, and phone were gone. But what they didn't know was, everything else remained untouched. A half-finished cup of tea sat on her coffee table. Her favorite book lay open, face down on her pillow. No struggle. Just an unsettling emptiness where a vibrant life had been. Detective Harding, a man who'd seen his share of tragedy, stood in Sarah's living room, a grim expression etched onto his face. He'd scoured the entire area, interviewed every last person who had seen her, checked every inch of surveillance footage, but the cameras on Elm Street had conveniently been offline that night for maintenance. He called it a ghost. No forced entry. And that's when investigators noticed something strange. It was as if Sarah Jenkins had simply ceased to exist. The air grew heavy with unspoken fear. The town, once so secure, began to lock its doors. Whispers turned to desperate questions. How could someone disappear so completely? What kind of monster could orchestrate such a silent, chilling act? And why was there absolutely nothing left behind? The frantic energy of those first weeks slowly, cruelly withered. The posters of Sarah's smiling face, once pristine and hopeful, bleached by sun and rain, curling at the edges, became tattered monuments to a fading dream. Autumn leaves fell, swirled by bitter winds, then gave way to the silent snows of winter, each season a fresh layer of cold on a family's shattered heart. Years blurred. A decade passed like a whisper in the dark. For Mark and Alina Jenkins, Sarah's parents, the world had bifurcated. There was life before, vibrant and full. And there was life after, a muted existence defined by an echoing absence. Years later, a phone call would reveal. Alina kept Sarah's room exactly as she'd left it, a half-read book on the nightstand, a forgotten hair tie on the dresser. A shrine to a ghost. She'd sit there sometimes, tracing the outlines of photographs, whispering questions to the dust motes dancing in the sunlight. Where are you, my girl? Who did this? But only silence answered. Detective Miller, once a driven, caffeine-fueled force, now carried the case file like a permanent shadow. He'd revisited every interview, every discarded theory, every inch of Sarah's property 100 times. The initial chaos had settled into a grim routine of dead ends. The town whispered. A drifter, some said. A random act. Others pointed fingers closer to home, though no one could name a suspect. Without a body, without a single compelling clue, the official narrative became a shrug. The truth was hiding in plain sight. A complete vanishing act, the new chief of police would tell reporters, a rote answer that satisfied no one. No witnesses. Nothing to go on. But that wasn't entirely true. There were always whispers of asterisk something. A strange car seen miles away, dismissed as a tourist. A vague comment made by a neighbor about Sarah and a supposed secret friendship, never pursued. Tiny threads easily broken, easily ignored. Nobody knew asterisk. Nobody truly understood the perfect stillness of that crime scene, the chilling precision that had wiped away every trace. The original investigators, overwhelmed, had moved on, haunted by the case they couldn't crack. Miller remained, a lone sentinel at the gateway of the unexplained. But the design seemed flawless. Years later, a phone call would reveal. It was a mystery nobody could explain. A perfect void. The town of Havenwood, once idyllic, now carried a subtle scar. Suspicion lingered in the air like wood smoke. Neighbors eyed each other a little differently. Parents held their children a little tighter. The monster, whoever it was never caught. It walked free. It breathed the same air. It lived among them. Years turned into decades. The case file, once a thick binder, became a dusty box in a forgotten archive. The public largely forgot. The media moved on. Years later, a phone call would reveal. And deep within the cold, hard facts of the disappearance lay a chilling secret, utterly undisturbed. A hidden truth, waiting for the right moment to surface, like a predator from the shadows. A truth so profound, it had allowed a killer to live a quiet life, utterly unsuspected by those around them. But for how long could a secret that dark truly remain buried? For how long could nobody know the terrifying reality? But for how long could a secret that dark truly remain buried? For how long could nobody know the terrifying reality? The weeks bled into months. The months crawled into years. The vibrant missing posters, once stark white against telephone poles, faded to sun-bleached ghosts, then peeled away, exposing the bare wood beneath. The town of Oakhaven, initially a hive of frantic speculation, slowly, painfully exhaled. The raw edges of grief smoothed into a dull ache. Life, as it always does, went on, but it was a life perpetually shadowed by an absence. A question mark hung over every gathering, every casual conversation. And that's when investigators noticed something strange. Investigators chased phantoms. A whispered rumor about a drifter passing through. Each lead was meticulously logged, cross-referenced, then dismissed. The police chief, a man named Miller with weary eyes and a perpetually rumpled suit, kept the case file on his desk, not in a cabinet. He'd flip through the yellowing pages late into the night, the faint scent of old paper and stale coffee filling his office, searching for the crack in the facade, the missed detail. There was nothing. Just empty space where answers should have been. They just vanished, he'd mutter, running a hand over his thinning hair. Like smoke. The prevailing theories solidified, each more unsettling than the last. Had they run away, a troubled teen escaping small-town life? The family vehemently denied it. Had it been a random act, a stranger from the highway, passing through and leaving chaos in their wake? But what they didn't know was, the lack of any other similar incidents made that feel unlikely. Or darkest of all, was it someone from within Oakhaven, someone still walking their streets, sitting in their pews, nodding hello at the grocery store? This thought, a cold tendril of fear, burrowed deepest into the community's subconscious. Eleanor Vance, the victim's mother, became a fixture at town council meetings, her voice hoarse, her pleas for renewed effort growing more desperate with each passing year. "Someone knows something," she'd whisper, her eyes sweeping across the familiar faces in the room. Who saw them? Who asterisk really saw them? But nobody stepped forward with that crucial missing piece. The initial public outrage gave way to sympathy, then pity, then an awkward silence when Eleanor's name was mentioned. People looked away, not because they didn't care, but because the helplessness was contagious, paralyzing. The case file grew heavy, but not with answers. It grew heavy with reports of dead ends, forensic tests that yielded nothing conclusive, interviews that went nowhere. The initial crime scene, so bafflingly clean, continued to mock them. No forced entry. The next discovery changed everything. No struggle. Nothing but an eerie silence where a life had once been vibrant. It was a mystery nobody could explain. They had blended back into the fabric of Oakhaven, a phantom lurking in plain sight. They knew the shortcuts. They knew the blind spots. And more terrifyingly, they knew the secrets. They knew what nobody else knew. And that knowledge allowed them to hide not just the body, but the very truth itself, for a staggering, unimaginable length of time. The killer, it seemed, was one of asterisk us asterisk. And what unspeakable secret did they hold so tightly? The quiet hum of the forensic lab replaced the frantic sirens of Oakhaven's past. The next discovery changed everything. Detective Miller traced a finger over the enlarged image on the screen, a single, microscopic thread. Not just any fiber. This was a blend of wool and cashmere, dyed with a rare, specific pigment, almost indigo, almost black. It was a thread found deep within Lily Maeve's oldest possessions, long overlooked, clinging stubbornly to the lining of a forgotten coat, a coat she hadn't worn that day. But it had been near her. The team ran the sample again. A custom-made suit, worn by only a handful of people in the county. One man in particular favored this exact blend, this distinct hue. Elias Thorne. The name hung in the sterile air like a phantom. Elias Thorne. The town archivist. The man whose carefully catalogued stories formed the bedrock of Oakhaven's identity. Years later, a phone call would reveal. The voice of reason, the pillar of the community, the one who spoke at every vigil for Lily, his eyes often red-rimmed with what seemed like genuine grief. He had held Lily's mother's hand, offered solace, shared poignant anecdotes about Lily's love for history. Nobody questioned Elias. He was Oakhaven's gentle shepherd, not its wolf. But the thread didn't lie. Investigators revisited every photograph, every interview. The pieces began to shift, to coalesce into a grotesque mosaic. Elias Thorne, always present, always helpful, always guiding the search away from certain paths. His detailed knowledge of old logging trails, forgotten caves, overgrown paths, dismissed as a historian's passion, now twisted into a sinister map. Lily, it turned out, had been working on a historical project, delving into Oakhaven's founding families. Elias' family was among them. She had unearthed old land deeds, forgotten journals, revealing a dark secret buried for generations. Thorne's ancestors had acquired their vast wealth through fraudulent land grabs, even violence against the original settlers. Lily was on the verge of exposing the truth, unraveling the very foundation of Elias' esteemed family legacy. Years later, a phone call would reveal. His carefully constructed life, built on inherited prestige and the illusion of moral authority, was about to crumble. He hadn't just killed Lily to silence her. He killed her to protect a lie that defined him. He meticulously planned her disappearance, knowing the town's every crevice, every seasonal oversight. He participated in the search, playing the part, whispering condolences, deflecting suspicion with a practiced ease honed by years of concealing his family's true origins. He was the most trusted, the least likely. A shadow hiding in plain sight, pulling the strings of public grief, directing the very narrative of Oakhaven's tragedy. The truth, when it finally emerged, was a punch to the gut of a trusting town. It wasn't some stranger who prayed from the shadows. It was the man who illuminated Oakhaven's past, the keeper of its stories. Elias Thorne, the community's beloved historian, was the hidden killer. And the dark truth he guarded was older, deeper, and far more corrupt than anyone had ever imagined. The architect of the cover-up, the voice of false comfort, was the very monster they sought. The hunt for a phantom had finally ended. Not with a roar, but with a whisper, chillingly familiar. Years later, a phone call would reveal. The confession hung heavy over Oakhaven, a suffocating shroud. Not the clamor of a celebration, but a quiet dread that settled into the bones of every resident. Elias Thorne. The name itself now tasted like ash, a betrayal etched onto the very landscape. Generations had trusted his narratives, his comforting fables of local history. Now those stories felt tainted, poisoned. Doors locked tighter. Shadows seemed deeper. It wasn't just a killer apprehended. It was a fundamental shattering of their reality. How many times had he walked among them, carrying his monstrous secret like a cherished heirloom? What other darkness lay hidden in the quiet corners of their lives, camouflaged by familiarity? The truth, when it finally emerged, wasn't a clean, liberating force. And that's when investigators noticed something strange. It was a corrosive acid, eating away at the very fabric of trust, leaving behind raw, exposed nerves. Justice had its moment. The gavel fell. But the echo of Elias Thorne's hidden life reverberated. It challenged every assumption, every comfortable certainty. Was his depravity an isolated blight, or a symptom of something deeper, woven into the forgotten tapestries of Oakhaven itself? Could such elaborate deception truly be the work of one man, or did his secrets find fertile ground in the silences and unspoken agreements of others? We yearn for villains to be monstrous, easily identifiable. And what happens to truth when it's been buried so deep, for so long, by those we least suspect?